Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In my last video, I shared 5 ways to beat camera shake, and I briefly touched on OIS and IBIS for your Fuji camera and also on the lenses. Now, I had a question from a subscriber asking how to turn this OIS and IBIS off, and I thought it would be worthwhile to share it in a video, and here we go. This is the video on explaining IBIS and OIS. So first off, if you're new to photography, you may not even know what OIS and IBIS means or stands for. In the past, cameras, before they got more technical, and the only way really to ensure that you got a super steady shot was to put your camera onto a tripod. So this meant that as soon as your camera was off the tripod, there was always the possibility of some camera shake spoiling your pictures and images. As cameras evolve, image stabilization technologies have been created and added to these cameras to help reduce the chances of your camera shake when taking a picture, and this is when you're taking a picture handheld. Now, in talking about Fujifilm uses 2 systems of image stabilization. They have optical image stabilization, OIS, and in-body image stabilization, IBIS. Now, depending on your Fuji camera and lens model, you may have both OIS and or IBIS included. So what exactly is this? Optical image stabilization. So Fujifilm's OIS system is found in selected XF, XC, and GF lenses. Now, the way to tell if your lens has OIS included is to check that the acronym OIS, it'll be in the model number of the lens name. So for example, XF 15-55mm f2.8, our OIS has image stabilization built in. It's a mouthful to say these lens names. OIS is designed to combat your camera shake. This is caused by horizontal, vertical movement, and to do this, it has actually a series of gyroscopic sensors within the lens that they make like thousands and thousands of adjustments and calculations per second to calculate when and how the lens is moving. And then what happens is one of the lens elements of the lens, which is motorized, is moved to combat this shake of your camera. So with this, you can actually sometimes hear, if you listen carefully, you can hear a little internal kind of whirring sound of the OIS lens if you have it active. Now, you have to listen really carefully like this. You might not be able to hear it very quiet, but it is there. The OIS systems in XF and XC lenses offer varying levels of image stabilization. Some lenses offer up to 5 stops of compensation, while others, they do offer less stabilization built into the lens. Just good to know, depending on your lens, you'll have different stabilization. It also is down to individual photographer. Some people are steadier when they're holding a camera as opposed to others, and how much compensation you can actually achieve with an OIS lens. Now, to do this, you can check this actually yourself. So you can attach a OIS lens to your camera, select shutter priority as the exposure mode, and with the OIS system turned off, take a shot at say roughly 1/125th of a second, and then check to see your image for sharpness. If it's sharp, try increasing your shutter speed time as you go, and just keep checking. And then eventually what you will find is you'll find a spot where you will start to notice shake in your shot, and then you know that that's when you have to put on the OIS. Now, if you turn the OIS system on and repeat the process, you'll notice you can use progressively longer shutter speeds, and then you'll see up until do the same test, you'll see up until when you can actually have a longer shutter speed, hand holding with OIS turned on and off. That way you kind of know the difference in the two, and you can adjust your shutter speeds accordingly. Now, while OIS is lens-based, there is an option in your camera menu system where you can actually choose when OIS works, and you can actually turn this off. So to make this, turn this setting off or on, you go to the shooting settings menu, you would choose IS mode, and then there you will have 2 options. There'll be a continuous option, and then there'll be a shooting only. So on the continuous option, the OIS system is always active whenever the camera is on, whereas when you have the shooting only, this switches on the OIS system only when the shutter release on your camera is pressed halfway to focus. I kind of generally have it on all the time just for simplicity's sake, but to maximize battery life, if you're thinking of that, is choose shooting only. That way the OIS will only work when you're pressing on the shutter. IBIS stands for In-Body Image Stabilization, and it's only actually available on some Fuji X series and GFX series cameras. One example is the Fuji XT4 that I use, and this offers a bit more sophisticated level of image stabilization over the OIS lens-based system. So for the Fuji XT4, which I'm filming this video on, IBIS is on, and the model before that, XT3, it didn't have the internal image stabilization. So where OIS works in 2 axes only, the IBIS works in 5 and can compensate for the vertical and horizontal movements as well. Same as OIS, plus roll, pitch, and yaw. So with this system, you can have up to more than 5 stops of compensation as possible, and it works irrespective of what lens you have attached. So if you have a lens attached that is not OIS, this in-body image stabilization will allow you to take more stable shots as well, even though the lens doesn't have OIS. So this is because rather than an element in the lens being used to compensate the movement, the camera sensor is moved instead. Now, while great for shooting still images, IBIS also will come into effect on its own when you're shooting handheld video footage. Prevents bouncing in your movies when you're filming and walking at the same time, for example. I'll be covering more Fuji XT4 video options in upcoming videos. I haven't touched on these yet, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already so you don't miss them when those come out. So here to answer the question is when not to use image stabilization. When you would not want to use image stabilization, it's a great question I had. And as great as IBIS and OIS are, there is always some occasions when you might want to consider turning these systems off. So you can turn off OIS is when you have a camera on a tripod. You really don't need to have it on there. This will save your battery life. If you strictly shoot on a tripod, you really don't need to have this systems in place and running. Another one would be, as we talked about a little bit before, is when you want to maximize your battery life. OIS and IBIS does use extra battery power. So if you're running low on your battery, this is one way you can actually turn this off, and it will give you the longest possible shooting times until you can switch your battery or charge up your camera. Now, it's also kind of recommended when you're shooting a video using the internal microphone and not an external microphone. It can sometimes actually pick up the IBIS. It can capture some of the sound of the OIS and the IBIS actually working in a microphone. So it's actually recommended if you have IBIS on, use an external microphone. That way you will not pick up the internal sounds of the camera. I haven't actually tested this out to know, but that's what they say at Fuji in the manual. So now let's go over to change the image stabilization settings on your Fuji XT4. To display the shooting options, this is in the still menu. You want to press menu OK, and you will select the shooting setting. This is the tab with the camera icon in it. You'll scroll down to the IS mode. It's on the second page, and there you will see 3 options. So there's continuous. So image stabilization is on at all the time. The next option is going to be shooting only. This is image stabilization is enabled only when the shutter button is pressed down. And the final option is off. So this will fully turn off your OIS and IBIS on your camera. Now, when you do have stabilization off, you'll notice on the back screen of your camera, there'll be kind of a little wavy hand icon. That is your indication that OIS and IBIS is turned off your camera. Now, there's another way to turn this off, quite simply, if you have an OIS lens, is to turn this right off. There's a little button right on the lens, and you would switch that to off. It has the same setting, same impact as turning it off on the menu system of your camera. If you have any further questions, I know we always go over these quite quickly on the YouTube channel. If you have any questions about OIS or IBIS, let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you found this video useful, hit the like button. And finally, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and clicking on the bell notification. It lets you get notified of new videos. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's always fun to do these videos, and I will see you in the next one.